Hello guys and girls, and welcome to today's lesson. As you can see here on the screen, the topic that we're talking about today is on-demand writing terms. This is actually something new that we haven't discussed yet this year. We just finished up our first unit. We just took our first common assessment. So now we're going to be switching gears and changing directions and talking about on-demand writing. On-demand is something that you guys are going to be hearing a lot about in 8th grade, and the biggest reason for that is because at the end of the year, when we take our KSA test, one of the areas that you all are tested in is on-demand writing. So right now we're working on building a foundation, understanding some of the key vocabulary that you need to know in order to be successful at the end of the year when you are asked to do that on-demand writing piece. As we go through these notes today, you should have a note-taking sheet already glued into your notebook, so I need you to make sure that you are following along and filling in the blanks. I've done my best to make sure that all of the keywords are underlined in the presentation today, but obviously this is a video. All of them go in order, so if you've noticed that you've missed one, feel free to rewind, go back, rewatch, so that you can have all of the blanks filled in. And I'll also say before we jump in here and get started that some of the wording might be slightly different on this presentation than what it is on your note-taking sheet. Just make sure that you guys are filling in the blanks with what's underlined here on the screen, and you are going to be just fine. So with all of that being said, let's jump in here and get started. Our learning target today, the goal that we are trying to accomplish, is I want to remind you that on-demand writing is fun and magical, which is why we have the unicorn, the very magical unicorn on the screen. All right, I'm totally kidding. I know that some of you guys are not the biggest fans of writing. However, like I've already said, we are working towards a goal, which is helping you reach that level of proficiency on the KSA test at the end of the year. And beyond that, being able to come up with a solid argument is a super important life skill, right? It can be in the smallest things, like having an argument with your brother or sister about who's going to get to sit in the front seat of the car. That is an argument, and you need to be able to come up with some claims and some reasons and some evidence to prove to your brother or to your family why you should be able to sit in the front seat. But it could also be more serious things in the future when maybe you need to come up with a stance on an important issue and be able to support that stance. And so even though we are applying this to specifically on-demand writing in 8th grade language arts, that doesn't mean that this is something that you're never going to use in the future. When you become an adult, you're going to have to be able to come up with some claims and be able to back up your claims with good reasons and strong evidence. So our real lesson target today is being able to define, so provide definitions, and identify, so be able to pull out the elements of a well-written, argumentative, on-demand essay. The first word on your notes, and you're going to notice that you do have some things underlined here, is introduction. When we are writing an on-demand essay, we start with the introduction paragraph. It's the first paragraph of your essay, and it's going to include 3 main features. First, you're going to have a hook. You're going to follow your hook with some background information, and then at the very end of the introduction paragraph, you have a thesis statement. And moving forward, we're going to break down each of those things to make sure you understand what a hook, background, and thesis is. Please make sure, again, that you are copying down the things that are underlined, and if you miss it, because I'm about to go on, feel free to rewind the video to get whatever you missed. The first element of the introduction is the hook. It is arguably one of the most important parts of your entire essay because it's the very first sentence, meaning it is the very first thing that your audience is going to read. The job of the hook is to grab the reader's attention. So just like if you were to go fishing, you would use some really good bait, you would have a really good hook to try to catch that fish. You have to do the same thing when you're writing. You have to have a good sentence that's going to draw your audience in. There are a few different types of hooks that we're going to be talking about this year, specifically question hooks, surprising facts, or short stories, but we're going to dive more into those next week. For now, please make sure that you have the required notes copied and then you can move on. After your hook, the next part of the introduction paragraph is what we call background information. It's actually the biggest portion of the paragraph, so the hook is only about 1 sentence. The thesis statement at the end is 1 sentence, but your background information in the middle is 3 to 5 sentences. And the job of the background information is to let your audience know what the topic is. So what are you writing about and why they should care? So why is this topic important to them? Again, this is where most of your introduction paragraph comes from. So it's a very super important part of that introduction. Please make sure you have the required notes copied and then you can move on. Ending the introduction paragraph, we have the thesis statement. This is the final sentence of the introduction. It's only 1 sentence, but I think it is the most important part of your entire essay, and we're going to talk more about that next week. The job of the thesis statement is to state your opinion on the topic and to give 2 reasons for why you feel that way. Your thesis statement is your claim. It's your position on the argument that's being presented. I did include this background with this man working on a house because I want you to think of your thesis statement like the foundation of a house. Imagine you have a house that has a really weak foundation. Let's say that over time a crack has formed in the foundation. We know that eventually that house is going to crumble. The same thing is true with your thesis statements. If you have a crack or a weak thesis statement, your paper, your on-demand is going to fall apart. But if you have a really strong thesis statement, you're going to have a really strong essay. Please make sure you have everything that is required copied on your notes, and then you can move on. We're going to move on to the body paragraph. So we talked about the introduction paragraph first. After the introduction, you have 2 body paragraphs in your on-demand essay. We call them paragraphs 2 and 3. And the job of the body paragraphs is to elaborate or to extend the ideas that you mentioned in your thesis statement. So remember, just a second ago, I said that the key number to remember with thesis statements is 2. And you're going to notice that we have 2 body paragraphs. So your first body paragraph is going to focus on the first idea in your thesis, and your second body paragraph is going to focus on your second idea in your thesis. If you imagine all 5 paragraphs of an on-demand essay, you can see that since there are 2 body paragraphs, that's where a majority of the essay comes from. So this is also where a majority of your grade is going to come from. The introduction is important, the conclusion paragraph is important, but most of the work is going to be dedicated to your body paragraphs because that's where most of the essay is. Please make sure that you have the notes copied and then you can move on. Body paragraphs start with a topic sentence. This is going to be the first sentence of each of your body paragraphs. And the job of the topic sentence is to tell what the rest of the paragraph is going to be about. So remember, your ideas for your body paragraphs come from your thesis. And so your topic sentence is going to mention one of the ideas that you brought up in your thesis statement. And it's going to let your audience know that that's what the rest of the paragraph is going to be about. Please make sure that you copy what you see here on the screen, and then you can move on. After your topic sentence, you're going to include a couple of things that you've already been introduced to this year, which are your E1s and your E2s. Just like in the ABE writing strategy, we have 2 E1s and 2 E2s. Our body paragraphs of our on-demand are going to have 2 E1s and 2 E2s. We know E1 stands for evidence and E2 is our explanation. Our evidence comes from our passage that we were given to write our on-demand, and then our E2s come from our brain. Most of the grade for the body paragraph is going to come from your E1s and your E2s. If you think even just about the ABE writing strategy, we know most of the paragraph is from our E1s and our E2s. It's the same for the body paragraphs, and so since that's what the majority of the paragraph is made up of, that's where a majority of your grade comes from. Please make sure you copy the required notes, and then you can move on. Our body paragraphs are going to include some transitions. Before your topic sentence, you'll have what's called a standard device transition. Those are very simple words like first, second, next, and finally. And then in the middle of your body paragraphs, again, just like our ABEs, you're going to have some internal transitions. Those are those transitions that go in the middle of the body paragraph to help your audience move between the E1s and the E2s. Some examples of internal transitions are words like furthermore, additionally, also, or in addition to. After your two body paragraphs, the next paragraph is the counter argument paragraph. We talked about counter arguments when we went over the elements of an argument, so hopefully you remember that when you are counter arguing something, you have to think about an argument that could go against your viewpoint, and then you have to come up with a reason to prove it wrong. So if you remember earlier, I mentioned you might need to be able to make arguments about who gets to sit in the front seat of the car. Me and my two older brothers had some serious knockout, drag out fights over who got to sit in the front seat of the car. And so I would always try to have a good counter argument on deck because my brothers would say things like, well, we're older, so we should get to sit in the front seat of the car. And I would say something like, okay, sure, you might be older, but I have better taste in music, so I need to be able to control the radio, so I should be able to sit in the front seat of the car. So again, when we're counter arguing, we're thinking about what would our opponent, someone who's arguing against us, say, and then how could we prove that wrong? Please make sure that you have the notes copied and then you can move on. Last but not least, our on-demand writing pieces are going to end with a conclusion paragraph. It's the very last paragraph of the entire essay. It's going to start with a transition, just like our body paragraphs do, but it's going to be a slightly different transition. A great way to start your conclusion is by saying something like, in conclusion, and then you wrap up your ideas. It's good to be clear with your audience and let them know, hey, I've said everything that I need to say, and I'm about to wrap up everything that I've mentioned in this essay. And the best part about the conclusion paragraph is that it should be the shortest paragraph of the entire essay. That is going to be it for our notes for today. We're going to be doing some stations here in the near future. As you are waiting for the timer to go off, please just sit quietly and be prepared to do some work with these vocabulary words.